2 weeks ago, I said this. In order to get better at animation, I need to get better at illustration. And since then, that's what I've been trying to do. Putting aside animations, I've been practicing my illustrations and trying to really understand the type of art that I want to make. For the longest time, most of my ideas have remained as just that, ideas. I know the rough shape and idea of what I'm trying to make, but when I actually try and put it on paper, it never comes out the way I like it to look. That ends here. That's what I'm going to solve for the foreseeable future until I can confidently and consistently make my characters, concepts, and ideas come out exactly how I'd like them to come out. Animation will unfortunately have to wait. But before I got into the nitty-gritty of truly practicing the fundamentals, I wanted to make some illustrations to have as kind of a control, so that later when I truly start stripping everything down to its bare roots, I can know what I need to work on the most and later have something to compare to when I eventually get better. So the following pieces you're about to see are the absolute best of what I'm able to produce as of now, using whatever knowledge I have. And hopefully they're good enough to not get ripped in half, but we'll have to see. The first thing I needed to do was figure out what my character Cassius looked like. If you've seen any of my previous videos, you've actually seen him already. He's been a character that's been growing with me for almost 10 years now, and I'm tired of having what's basically a decade-old character not have a face. But I didn't exactly know where to start. So I looked online, looking for references, and eventually found one on Pinterest. This image captured the exact bags under his eyes, the lifeless pupils, and naturally tired look that I had always envisioned in Cassius. So I immediately snagged the reference and dragged it into my canvas, traced over it with guidelines, and broke each feature down separately. I really needed to know why this expression worked. So the first thing I worked on were the eyes. Not because I was interested in making them super flashy and gorgeous like a lot of other artists do, but because I needed to nail his expression. Cassius isn't a naturally flashy looking character, and his micro expressions are critical to his story. After getting some eyes I liked, I worked on his hair, which did take a bit more time to understand, but in the end, I got something I was satisfied with. After putting all of the features together, I finally had a face I was mostly satisfied with. But by this point, I got bored and wanted to use my new head model. So instead of making a 3/4 front and back view like I probably should have, I jumped straight into a full action pose. Since I knew I wanted this to be one of my best works, I played into my strong suit, hands, making it the forefront of the piece. I did have a little bit of trouble with the face, considering it was an unfamiliar angle, but I do believe that in the end, I was able to make it work. But it was when I was drawing the clothes that it really dawned on me just how little I knew of what I was doing. The hair that I had designed prior was basically useless for the pose I had gone with, so I was shooting in the dark for that. The clothes and folds were all guesses, going with whatever felt and looked right. The lighting was also just my best attempt at where the lighting felt right, but was ultimately much harder than it should have because my folds weren't drawn right previously. The background had to be reduced to a mediocre gradient because simply I didn't know how to draw any. And even my hands, of which I had considered my strong suit, was still a little messed up. It was while making this piece that I realized just how little I knew and how much I had to improve. But even with all of these realizations, I did make my best attempt to finish drawing. And I do believe that it came out good enough to be spared from getting torn apart. So it's on to the next illustration. My second piece was actually a lot more straightforward because I knew exactly what pose I wanted to do before I started the piece. It also helped that this was a much simpler piece with a pretty symmetrical pose and not nearly as dynamic of a pose as the first one. I still struggled a bit with the face and the hands, but I got there eventually. Since my process here was pretty much the same as the first one, I'm going to tell you about my switch from OpenToonz to Krita. The program you're seeing me use right now is Krita, and this is my first time using Krita for illustration. I tried it once a long while back to see how animation will hold up on this program, but with the confusing layout and overwhelming amount of stuff there was in this program, I quickly went back to the comfort of OpenToonz, which is the program you see me do all my work on till now. But OpenToonz is limited in 3 main areas. For one, it's limited in its brushes, something of which I wanted to try more of, which OpenToonz unfortunately couldn't provide. Krita also had more advanced layer effects, which was definitely something that took a while to understand, but had huge benefits once I figured them out. And lastly, and probably the biggest factor in the switch, Krita had a built-in time-lapse feature. OpenToonz didn't. With all of those factors, it was a no-brainer to switch to Krita, at least for now, since I was solely focused on improving my illustrations. And I've gotta say, after finishing this piece, I actually quite like this one. There are some obvious flaws, like in the overall proportions and especially the sleeves, but I really like the expression. I think I nailed how I wanted Cassius to feel in this specific scene. So just for that, even though there are some more obvious flaws in this one than in the first piece, I think I'll be spared once more. And now the last piece. You might notice that it's not exactly finished, and that's because by this point, I was tired with not knowing how to draw. You'll notice that I'm constantly redrawing and restarting, not knowing what, or more specifically, how to draw a certain pose. And it's here that I'm putting my foot down and saying that I need to learn. I need to forget whatever I already know and really build my foundation, because whatever it is I think I know is clearly not helping me with making the pieces I want to make. I really did want to push through and finish this third piece though, as you'll see me restart this piece at least 3 times. But I was so done with knowing it wasn't foundationally right that I just stopped halfway. It kinda sucked that I couldn't finish my final drawing, and it did put me down a little that my final attempt turned out the way that it did. But I will say, not only did it feel amazing to finally be making finished and polished work again, but they're actually not bad. I'm mainly happy that I was able to make at least somewhat decent pieces before I went back to the basics. Otherwise, I feel like I would have set the bar a little too low. But I think I was able to set the bar high enough so that I could feel both determined enough to beat this bar and also feel accomplished when I eventually do overcome it. Now that I have my control in place, I feel very excited to start improving in the areas that I felt trapped in. And knowing that I have so much to improve excites me. Because if I can see how many mistakes I've made in pieces like these, just what are the possibilities for my art in the future? The idea alone makes me incredibly excited. So now it's time to get to the grind. But I suppose before that, I should get some sleep and... Oh. Right.